I'm pretty sure I can say with confidence that as anime fans, we all enjoy fantasy. Dragons, dwarves, elves, monsters, kingdoms, scenic otherworldly vistas, and worlds that you can get lost in. What's not to love? The genre of fantasy destroys the barriers of realism and leaves in its wake pure wonder and joy. Epic stories that have paved the road for countless others come from this very genre. The Lord of the Rings, Dragon Quest, Akira, and Narnia being some older examples, with others such as the Witcher games, Made in Abyss, the Percy Jackson novels, and of course even the Marvel Cineverse being some more recent examples. Fantasy is such a broad genre and allows authors, screenwriters, and game designers to meld their own stories without the conformities of real life tying them down. However, while the stories that come from this genre are gripping, I often find myself more moved by the worlds these stories take place in, and while I could rattle on and on about the fantasy genre in all art mediums, today I'd like to focus specifically on anime and some of the more recent examples of fantasy worlds that have absorbed me like nothing ever has, and hopefully give some tips on how to create a fantasy world that is believable. Now, the genre of fantasy in anime can be applied to stories ranging from Sword Art Online all the way to Ghost in the Shell. I'm sorry to all those out there who just cringe from me giving any comparison between the two series. Today though, I want to shine the spotlight on Made in Abyss and The Ancient Magus Bride, two shows that hold the title for the most believable and awe-inspiring fantasy worlds I've ever seen, chock full of magic, monsters, flora, and those scenic vistas I was talking about earlier. For those who care, I will be spoiling some details from Magus Bride and Made in Abyss, so for those who want to go in completely blind, I suggest you watch both these shows. Now it's time to dive into our favorite magician's world and to see just what makes the Ancient Magus Bride's world so damn good. The Ancient Magus Bride pulls its fantasy from the legends and stories of the past, incorporating centuries of culture and folklore into 24 episodes of pure wonder. The show includes dragons, goddesses, magicians, fairies, whatever race you'd classify Elias as, shape-shifting dog boys, and countless other creatures populate this world to the brim, each of them having their own motivations and personalities that drive them. You get to tag along with the main character Chisei to see how these creatures live their lives, the social disconnects from race to race, and the breathtaking locales they have made their own. These areas feel lived in and iconic to only the creatures that live in them, and really help in convincing the viewer that these creatures are real. In episode 3, we are treated to meeting the dragons, a race that has gone almost extinct in the modern era, and are now carefully watched and guarded by the magician Echoes. Here we meet numerous younger dragons and an older dragon named Nevin on his deathbed. We see him covered with moss, his scales cracking off, and him having so little energy that he can barely open his eyes. This is where I was completely hooked on this show and this world, because here we are introduced to how these dragons die. In this episode, we are told about 3 different species of dragon: the Gui, the Biana, and the species Nevin is, a Yule. And as we are told about the Yule, when they die, they return to nature by turning into trees, boulders, and moss. As the camera pans around the scenery, we see numerous other Yule who have already passed on. This would be an incredibly somber scene if not for one fact. The dragon hatchlings seem almost gleeful that Nevin is about to pass on. You see, these dragons don't have the same feelings as humans toward death. In fact, when it is their time to go, they embrace it with open arms. And while it is an incredibly uncomfortable topic for humans, dragons speak about it with no fear, as they live every day to their fullest so they have no regrets. Nevin shares what are his final moments with Chisei, passing on wisdom to help her troubled mind. And just like that, Chisei and Elias move on. In one episode, the Ancient Magus Bride was able to absorb me more than most anime can in 13 episodes. And they did this by introducing creatures that live in a world so unlike our own that I would be fine watching an entire series just about them alone. This anime has 24 episodes filled with creatures like the dragons, and when I recently watched the 3-episode OVA, I was instantly pulled back into this majestic world. The Ancient Magus Bride is a masterclass in creating a believable and absorbing fantasy world, and I hope that you will be able to get lost in it just like I did. Next but certainly not least is Made in Abyss. For those who somehow don't know about this show yet, it won Anime of the Year in 2018. So yeah, it's kind of a big deal. This show deserves every single bit of the hype as well. With the amount of creatures, gadgets, and the magic of the Abyss, it has made a world that feels as deep and mysterious as the Abyss itself. The show starts by introducing our main characters Riko, who is a part of a group of orphans who delve into the Abyss to get artifacts to raise money for the orphanage she's a part of, and Reg, a mysterious robot with amnesia who saves Riko from one of the many monsters that populate the Abyss. The show explores the city surrounding the Abyss, Orth, making it clear that the culture and people living in the city are directly connected with the Abyss and its many treasures. Seeing such a bustling city surrounding the Abyss makes the viewer curious about just what must be in the Abyss to justify so many people risking their lives to delve into it. Along with one of the best first episodes in any anime I've ever seen, it creates a feeling that the characters and the viewer are about to undertake a journey like no other, with the show sending off the first episode with an ominous scene of Orth surrounding the Abyss. There's going to be a link in the description to Explanation Point's video where he goes in depth about what makes Made in Abyss's first episode fantastic. Watching the characters in Made in Abyss react to these many dangers residing in Orth's Pit is the main enjoyment of the show. The reason it is so damn entertaining is because instead of the feeling of the world centering on Riko and Reg, it instead feels as if the show centers on the Abyss itself, with Riko and Reg desperately trying to survive and descend this hellish environment. The Curse of the Abyss is a perfect example of this. The Curse is basically a mysterious force that prevents adventurers from ascending in the Abyss without serious consequences. These consequences ranging from nausea when returning from the first floor to bleeding from every orifice on the fourth floor, and can even cause death when returning from the sixth layer. The curse stands out as a constant uncomfortable reminder that if our protagonists are ever in a position where they're forced to ascend, they will have to not only deal with the deadly creatures of the Abyss that were likely already hunting them, they will also have to deal with the rising severity of ascending as they delve deeper into the depths of the Abyss. Speaking of the many creatures in the Abyss, they never come across as cannon fodder or having a personal vendetta against our protagonists. They are all just looking for food and come across as dangerous, hungry predators who spot too easy prey in their hunting grounds. With Riko and Reg just barely surviving through the use of Riko's extensive survival knowledge, and Reg being a weapon of pure destruction. These two characters play really well off each other as they cover each other's weaknesses. Without Reg's ability to fend off the cunning and deadly creatures of the Abyss, Riko would have died immediately. And without Riko's extensive knowledge, Reg would have no clue on where to go or what to do. Both of these characters are obviously way out of their depth in the Abyss, and continually prove that they are vastly inexperienced to conquer the countless dangers they will find. The design and mannerisms of each of these many deadly creatures are fascinating as well, with Riko constantly chipping in with nuggets of knowledge that allow them to know just what they are facing. This combined with the breathtaking scenery of each of the Abyss's layers provides a feeling of being in such a bizarre, beautiful, yet at the same time incredibly dangerous world. It really is amazing to see how each layer has its own flora, animals, and ecosystem populating it. It really convinces the viewer that the Abyss is truly a demon that humanity has still yet to conquer, with so much more left unexplored even deeper down. Made in Abyss has done what few anime are able to, and put forth a world where it feels as if our protagonists' lives are constantly in peril. That we might not see both of them survive onto the next episode, and anime uses this haunting feeling to give some really emotional and nausea-inducing scenes. Made in Abyss has truly shown us an environment that seems more perilous than any I've ever seen before, and I can't wait for more of this mysterious world to be explored. So now that I've explained just why both Made in Abyss's and the Ancient Magus Bride's worlds are so interesting, what is it about them that makes them so believable? I personally think it's their ability to make a world that exists outside of the main characters, with the Ancient Magus Bride showing us characters and entire cultures that seem so alien and different to our own, and making them exist and act outside of Chisei and Elias. With each race they meet having their own habits and motivations that just so happen to cross paths with our characters. And Made in Abyss's approach, where they make a culture that centers around the Abyss itself, giving a feeling that our main characters are only able to survive because of the information given by their predecessors, while also giving the Abyss some of the most unique creatures, flora, ecosystems, and scenery I've seen in my entire anime career, making a show that feels as jaw-droppingly beautiful as it is deadly. These shows provide standout examples in creating a world that is truly absorbing, and if I'm to leave creators with some tips to attempt to make a world that is just as, and if not more believable than these two shows, I would give them 3 core principles to follow. 1. Create a world that exists outside of your main characters. Ask yourself, if the main character doesn't exist, would people still find interest in these other side characters? 2. Create a new and interesting culture for your world. If your characters happen to visit a dwarven city, for example, what makes the city so different from human cities for it to be classified as dwarven? 3. Create creatures and beings that are unique enough to stand out. This doesn't mean you can't use already developed races, such as dragons and elves, but try and challenge yourself to evolve the viewer's preconceived notion of what a dragon or elf is. Put your own spin on the stereotype to make it memorable. Hopefully these tips will help any aspiring artists out there to make characters and worlds that evolve and improve our oh-so-beloved fantasy genre, and I can't wait to experience and get lost in a new generation of fantasy worlds. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. I had a blast revisiting Made in Abyss and The Ancient Mage's Bride to make this video. They're both on my best anime ever list, and I would really recommend that you guys give them a watch. Speaking of this video, what is your guys' opinion on what makes a fantasy world that immerses you? Throw those opinions down in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this adventure, and I'll see you all on the next one.